and also emerging issues in the practice arena. So I think we have an opportunity there, even provided at a higher level, like in the Constitution. So surely what I think is going forward, we can start identifying the areas where we need to build consensus, and then we develop the guidelines, and where we need rules, of course, we'll be guided by the people who have the legal minds, so that we can be able to clarify some of these things and don't contravene the law. I think I'll leave it at that, because there's also a possibility of overregulation. So if you overregulate, then again you stifle creativity. And that's why I think when Professor said that you run as fast as you can, I think Dr. Ngethi has also commented on that. You run as fast as you can before regulation catches up with you. Probably I'll agree with that sentiment, but ideally we need to work within a framework that upholds good professional standing, and which is not in conflict with any other law in this country. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cheng. So as I move towards my last question as the moderator, because I'm keen to read some of your questions, and I would encourage that they can start coming through in the chat box. Jared, back to you. So from regulation back to policy, how do you think the government can use other instruments to get more from pharmacists? Clearly, this is a heavy investment in training and in getting these people prepared for practice. And now we're in a space where, particularly community pharmacy, which is the bedrock of primary health care, from a pharmacist's lens, if you ask me, is struggling. Do you think, are there effective ways that the government, through policy instruments like contracting, purchasing of services, or any other strategies, are there mechanisms that they can use to then reach the private community level practitioners to encourage that field to grow? We know, for instance, in the UK under the NHS, and about 90% of the pharmacies are actually contracted under the primary care system of the NHS, and even countries like Jamaica have tried the same as well. I think in 2018 they introduced an initiative called Farmacia Popular do Brasil, where the government was purchasing NCD services from private pharmacies as a way of encouraging them to reach the community more. Is this something that you think there's potential? Are there any thoughts around it? And generally, what are your thoughts about just using policy instruments rather than regulatory instruments to encourage, primary health pharmacy practice?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Frank. And that's absolutely fantastic, because that's the future. So, so let me go back so that you could see why I'm saying that. So UHC, for example, UHC as a wider concept started from an input. Okay, and traditionally in this country we have had a lot of input financing. So a lot of supply side kind of financing. So if we want to, so for example, currently, starting from the pilot counties, we had a conditional grant to the counties as drawing rights through KEMSA. So that has been the traditional way of, and currently speaking, we have 5 billion shillings dedicated to counties as drawing rights, and allocation done per county. So that's one way that we have traditionally thought about it. Human resource, traditionally we have focused on, recruitments, including the recent recruitments, for example, on behalf of counties. So a lot of input kind of financing. Now, the vision moving forward, starting this year, is strategic purchasing of healthcare services for all Kenyans through a reformed NHIF, right? I know that's a chunk. So strategic purchasing, you are purchasing strategically for specific outputs and outcomes. Then number two, you are reforming NHIF. You are reforming NHIF to become a social health insurer. As at now, NHIF is a hospital insurer. So how do we move from hospital insurer to a health insurer? Now, coming to that, once you do that, then it means you have to start purchasing for primary care services, preventive and promotive services. And that's the significance in changing hospital to health, for example. Now, so Kenyans, what we have been working on, for example, is that all Kenyans will have a right to access a particular set of services that are considered essential. Now, this is put in a package through a UHC scheme at NHIF. So this essential health benefit package for the UHC scheme at NHIF will be a right for all Kenyans. Now, if you think about that for a second, because what it means is this: as pharmacists increasingly play a bigger role in primary healthcare, as we have discussed, vaccinations, screening, as pharmacists increasingly play a role in multidisciplinary teams, working with other healthcare professionals to deliver and improve patient outcomes. As we shift towards this social health insurer, several things must be put in place. Number one is that you are purchasing for outcomes. So for example, if you look at our current schemes, let me pick one benefit. For example, renal dialysis. We'll have schemes that are proudly saying that we do 2 dialysis sessions per week. For example, at NHIF now, 2 sessions per week are paid for by the insurer. In the UHC scheme, we are trying to actually make sure now there are 3 as per recommendation. But then there's a question: why are you waiting for patients to reach a point of end-stage renal failure requiring dialysis? So the question is, does your package provide preventive and promotive health services for hypertension and diabetes and other risk factors to prevent this patient? Because it is more cost-effective to catch a patient with high blood pressure, and by the way, many Kenyans are undiagnosed. So that's a role for pharmacy. So for example, in my pharmacy in Kisii, I am providing blood pressure and blood sugar screening. How do I get reimbursed? So that I'm assisting the health system in Kenya to prevent this patient from eventually requiring more expensive, poorer outcome services later down the road in terms of dialysis services. So that's where we are now starting to shift towards. That is the future. And that's where pharmacists and pharmaceutical care and public health and primary health care and all these concepts we have discussed become increasingly important. So several questions to pose here. Pharmacists, of course, we must, and I think we've already made this, Professor Gwantai, who was my lecturer, has actually explained it, and she made me happy when I was listening to her, that there are those significant shifts now. So we need to increasingly become more patient-oriented, increasingly dispense or perform our practice for outcomes, not for the sake of dispensing, for outcomes. So step number 3, then how does a pharmacy, now in this reformed NHIF, how does a pharmacy become accredited to perform a particular set of services as per the package that are cost-effective and efficient, and how do I get reimbursed? That, colleagues, is the next big discussion. And I know PSK had at one time started this discussion, but that's the next big discussion. 2 questions: what services are in the package? Number 2, who is providing those services? Where, how, when, and how much are you paying me for providing those services? So Frank, to come back to your question now, in terms of, there are significant policy instruments around which the role of the pharmacist is about to exponentially increase. And as I've said, one of them is the insurance, as a mechanism for purchasing services. And that's why the UHC policy is absolutely vital. And 2, how do pharmacists, because we know we have a problem. We have a lot of quacks, right? We have a lot of issues in community pharmacy that need to be resolved. We need, because you cannot join the insurance scheme, if you do not have, for example, a pharmacist and you're not providing a particular set of services in a professional manner. Because otherwise what it means, the system loses resources through inefficiencies. So how do we set in place, for example, the Green Cross? How does the Green Cross, for example, there may be many, but for example, how does the Green Cross assure that pharmacists that are accredited shall be the only ones to join NHIF? And if that's the case, then they will be reimbursed at a certain cost. Now that brings in another issue, affordability of medicines. Big problem, right? Across the country. Number one, we are not evenly pricing our medicines. Number two, so we have very wide variations, and at times we have excessively high costs at times. So that raises questions. So this insurer, and we're having discussions, for example, with NHIF. If you look at NHIF now, the reimbursement is per diem, per capitation cost, or per diem, or a fee for service that is comprehensive. It includes the drugs. So if you ask NHIF, give us the data for your pharmaceutical reimbursements per category of therapeutic class of drugs, it doesn't exist. Why? Because pharmaceutical benefit is together with the rest. And that's where all this becomes key. Then there's also the issue of accreditation of health facilities. And I would urge everyone to try and have a look at the National Certification Framework for Facilities in Kenya that was launched by His Excellency the President in March 2020, I think during the Healthcare Forum, and the Honorable CS Mutai Kagwe. Please have a look at that National Certification Framework for Health Facilities in Kenya. It starts to give you a picture of how these policy instruments are coming into play into purchasing for quality of care, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. So I think that's going to be key. Lastly, maybe let me mention one more thing. As we move to this accreditation of pharmacies and the accreditation of the wider health facilities, purchasing for outcomes and outputs, cost-effective care and quality of care, as we move to the other roles we've discussed, so how pharmacies will play those roles to enhance the efficiency of the system. And lastly, there was a fantastic question. I'm trying to remember who asked it in the Q&A around privacy, around confidentiality, around data security. So which means, for example, what system are we going to use, a pharmaceutical management information system that is linked, for example, with that social health insurer, so that if I have a prescription from Bagathi or I have a prescription from Mama Lucy, etc., KNH, and it is not filled, how do I go to that private pharmacy or community pharmacy or my nearest primary healthcare pharmacy? And how do I get my treatments from there and my monitoring for the same from that facility? Those are big, big questions. And I agree with you, Frank, that have serious policy implications. So policy may lead, and then the rest, of course, the regulations will soon follow, for example, in terms of pricing, Frank. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jared. I think that was extremely comprehensive. You talked about, I think, very important factors such as purchasing and contracting out certain services from the public sector as a way of encouraging this. I took the liberty of going through some of your questions, comments, and in no particular order. Dr. Joseph Kadaris seems to express a bit of frustration, saying there shouldn't be any discussion on what and how a pharmacist should be reimbursed. Why should we not have the same problem to reimburse medical practitioners? So again, I'll throw this to the panel. Possibly, I think, Jared, based on what you've just been saying, why is it that these debates only come up when you start talking about purchasing pharmacy services outside of hospitals or primary healthcare at community pharmacy? Why is it that, services are purchased from standalone clinics, which are not hospitals, as you know? In fact, a lot of them are almost operating as primary healthcare units, but the same courtesy is not extended to pharmacies. In a sense, some of the things you've said obviously address that issue of How do you accredit? How do you price specific services? Because medicines are easy, but what about other services? I was wondering whether you have any quick reflections to that frustration.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So let me answer it in twofold. So one is that largely, so from a UHC perspective, the costs of healthcare, as you expand access, as you now say 100% of Kenyans are going to be insured because of certain issues around how services are used when people are insured. There is an exponential increase in costs. So as you do that, it is necessary that you also put in place cost management, cost containment strategies from as you go along. And the interest so far with regard to UHC, as far as I know, in fact, it is the other way around, that the interest has been to maintain all healthcare costs. So for example, the ministry, one of the questions was being asked is, have we costed healthcare services across the board? That's a major exercise. Then number two, how do we contain costs across the board? So last year, I think if I remember correct, last year, the medical board, now the medical council, announced a budget, a cost cut of the charges that are placed by medical practitioners on patients. So, and dentists, there was a cost cut around across board for various procedures. That was an effort to bring down the cost of care where it is, where there are issues around high costs being charged. Then the second question now that has been grappled with following, of course, multiple reports, including the ESCC report on the pharmaceutical sector that demonstrated there's a pricing issue. Now the question has also focused on how do we contain costs? Pharmaceuticals are very expensive, right? 20 to 40% of costs in the healthcare system are as a result of health products and technologies in general. So you cannot just go reimbursing at any cost. That would be responsible. You have to progressively do that in a fair, of course, consultative manner. As I am aware now, a medical pricing advisory committee was inaugurated last week by the ministry leadership. And this committee has representation across board, and they are looking at how do we contain or reduce or, strategies around containment of cost as we progress. So anyway, to answer the question is not only focused on pharmacies, it is also focused on procedures. And as I have explained, a lot of cuts have come around for medical procedures, including surgical procedures that were thought to be a bit on the high side. Then lastly, as we move to the social health insurer, there is generally the question of, I am the social health insurer for the Republic of Kenya. A cesarean section under Linda Mama is 17,500 shillings in a level 5 and a level 6, for example. So you must ask yourself those kind of questions as you move forward. For example, will you allow to reimburse a cesarean section at 200,000 shillings in a high-cost private hospital? You see, these are serious questions that you must have a schedule of services, their costs, a schedule of the medicines and medical supplies and their cost that you as a social insurer are reimbursing. Anyone else in the private market, of course, the forces apply and to the same, because these prices are also negotiated between the social health insurer and the providers, culminating in a contract. So to assure the participants, Dr. is concerned, this is not a unilateral decision, because eventually if you're contracting Pharmacy Frank, if I'm coming to Pharmacy Frank and I'm contracting for supply of medicines, we have to agree as a purchaser and as a seller. So, and that is with, that process of NHIF, which is what culminates in the contracting that NHIF does. But my point was, generally speaking, that whenever you're increasing services under UHC, you expect an increase in access, you expect an increase in use, maybe some slightly misuse and overutilization in some areas, and you have to start cost containing and questioning, right, around, including lab, etc. But it is done in a consultative process. It is done with the relevant stakeholders. So it's not a pharmacy question, it is a health system question that applies to everyone. Frank, over, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. And again, very comprehensive as you're giving that, as you're closing as well. So I'm gonna give Dr. Cheng and Professor Gontai 1 minute each to just give us a closing. Just generally, the comments I think have been quite positive. Professor, you are being encouraged, to keep pushing the boundaries, and particularly picked clinical pharmacy and public health have been mentioned here as areas that you should continue venturing into. Dr. Chen, your efforts have been appreciated, and there's quite a bit of gushing over all the efforts and all the cool things that you're doing at the board. That's really good to see. So just feel encouraged as well, so that you keep that going. I was trying to see whether there's anything else that I need to address. I didn't quite see directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Dr. Chen. Just take a few seconds and give you a closing.
Thank you, Dr. Wafula, for those good comments. Now, I just want to say that in terms of regulation, there's quite a lot that we need to do, because actually, to begin with, some of these roles need to be actually captured, not for anything, but at least in regulations, because starting with education, the education and training required to offer the various services, that should be kind of prescribed, whether in guidelines or in regulations. The reason being that you need to gain professional legitimacy among professional colleagues, and of course, among other healthcare workers. If, for example, people think that a pharmacist cannot inject a contraceptive because they think you have not been trained to do that injection. You cannot inject a vaccine because they think you have not been trained. But if there's a framework within which the nature of education and training that is required is defined, then we gain legitimacy and hatutapingwa. And of course, there's this discussion around fees. I think in many professions, including legal, even medical, and even pharmacy in some countries, they have developed rules relating to the services for which a pharmacist may levy fees and guidelines for levying such fees. Yeah. So this is something which we may also need to do so that we try to standardize things a bit and avoid what we call unhealthy competition, because we all know that even in the community pharmacy sector right now, there's a lot of unhealthy competition, what we call undercutting and that kind of stuff. So as much as we're in a liberalized economy, to uphold good professional standards, I think competition should be on service delivery rather than on pricing, such kind of things. I also wanted to comment on, in terms of what we need to do, registration. If you are going to be certified to offer certain services, then there should be a mechanism to certify that, whether you're going to be registered and retained as such. And that is just to ensure that there's a way of recognizing that this person is conducting lawful practice when you're engaging in those activities that may require regulation. So another area I wanted to comment on was the issue of prescribing pharmacists. Currently in Cap 244, it is vaguely implied in section 31(2) that an authorized seller of poisons may supply a Part 1 poison prescribed or dispensed by himself. And in any case, every case in which he supplies the poison on prescription, whether by the prescription has been drawn up by himself or not, shall be entered in the particulars in the prescription book in accordance to the Act. So kind of it's allowed, but there's a restriction. The only thing is that it sounds a bit vague. In some other jurisdictions, they have gone ahead and made regulations regarding some of these things. Who is a pharmacist prescriber? So basically, what I'm saying is there's a lot that we need to do to regulate the pharmacy services, define the levels of practice, who is supposed to do what. I know the board is currently working on scheduling of medicines and defining who should be able to handle what medicines. So all this, I think, we should focus on them so that at least when we're saying that pharmacies are the primary healthcare level, within the government health system, there's already a lot which is defined, because if you go to level 3 and level 2, it is defined who should be, the human resource requirements. I think level 3, it is according to the norms and standards, a pharmacist can work there. But the limitation that we have, based on, like recently when we were assessing, we're working with some counties on assessing preparedness for USC, and you realize that there is no county which has a pharmacist at that level. Some of them don't even have a farm tech at that level, level 3, that is the health center level. So the main reason which is being given is resources, because the resources are scarce and you have to optimize their use. And that's why we're saying that this can be achieved, but progressively, as we try to get more resources to do it. So at the community pharmacy level, I think every pharmacist can proceed and engage as much as possible in these roles that have been defined as a primary healthcare roles of a pharmacist. So in conclusion, let me just say that the future of attaining the highest standard of health attainable is in primary healthcare, and the pharmacies being, community pharmacies being the first point of call in most of the cases. I think pharmacists can be cognizant, taking recognition or cognizant of the referral system, can engage in these activities, but where people cannot be, where you know that you need to refer, of course, take advantage of the referral system to help the patient so that the patient gets the best that they can get in the healthcare system. I think I'll stop there because of time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Cheng. Greatly appreciated. I recognize you started at 35 past noon, so our 1 hour is up exactly. But I think it would be wrong to give Dr. Gwantai a moment to also, just give us her closing comments as well. Professor.
Thank you once again from the University of Nairobi. We shall continue to be guided by the global trends and also the local dynamics in pharmacy practice to review and remodel our curriculum so that we impart the necessary knowledge and skills. We need to note that training and knowledge is a key driver of innovation, and regulation is about regulating what is in place. Training is about facilitating creation by probably giving the skills that can lead the graduates in innovating products and services. And therefore, we shall continue to grow this area. We want also to enhance the experiential training of our graduates, because there is quite a lot of theoretical knowledge, but we really do not give adequate time for experiential training. And for us to do that, we have embarked on creating collaborations and networks with the same thinking groups, including the industrial sector. And therefore, we intend to identify appropriate preceptors in these sites that can help us grow the experiential skills of our graduates. We also hope that if we have adequate funding, we should be able to create the skills labs, where again, we shall use these labs to train our students on even diagnostic and screening skills. I would request that the regulatory authority looks through the management of the internship program. We have the internship guidelines that I think are currently under review, or probably they have been reviewed. But we would wish to see a situation where internship is managed with involvement of the training institutions. This happens in the US. When you hear of the US, I think it's the PharmD program, when they talk about 6 years, the last year is actually the internship year, which is actually done together with the regulatory authority and the training institutions. So I think there's a gap there that we can exploit so that we enhance the training of graduates. The other area that I need to mention as we prepare to deliver primary health care is the aspect of documentation. I think for a long time I've been saying that the pharmacists, we are very poor in documenting what we do and how we do it, and therefore we never leave a trail that other people can actually come review and also learn from. So this is an area that we really need to improve on, all of us. And I think the modules that we have introduced in our curriculum will help our graduates acquire some of these skills. The other small area that I would like to mention is about herbal medicine as an important area of practice. We have taught pharmacognos for many years. We even have a postgraduate program in in pharmacognos and traditional medicine, but the impact has not yet been felt. So this is an area that we need to grow very, very strongly and quickly. I was in a WHO meeting. I have been recruited into the WHO expert committee on traditional medicine. And we had meetings this week. That is how I missed some of the sessions in this PSK conference. And in that meeting, I listened to quite a number of presentations from other countries like South Africa. They are moving very, very fast. South Africa is likely now to become the China of Africa in terms of herbal medicine practice and including manufacturing. I actually had the benefit of even seeing one of the schools of pharmacy where they have put up a very, very state-of-the-art manufacturing unit for herbal medicine. So the presentation that was made by our president yesterday, our PSK president yesterday, that touched on putting up a manufacturing facility, I think is most welcome, because if I understood him right, I think he also mentioned that the facility can look into the manufacturing of herbal medicine. So there's a lot of research work that has been on herbal medicine, but that has not been translated into products. And I think that is the next place where we need to move into. Finally, I am happy to hear from the regulator that there's a lot that is happening in terms of trying to address issues of overregulation, because overregulation actually stifles creativity and innovation. So the regulatory authority must be very, very quick in facilitating us to translate our knowledge into practice by reviewing a CAP 244 if and when need arises. Finally, as I close, let me say that pharmacy as a profession, we are on the right track. We have good leadership, both at the PSK, at PPB, and I believe that, sorry, the principal is calling me. With this bright future, I'm requesting, Dr. Luke, I'll get back to you, please. I'll get back to you, please. Let me finish. So I'm saying with this bright future ahead of us, I'm appealing that PSK, PPB, and the academia continue working very, very closely. I consider us to be triplets, conjoined triplets. And whatever we do, let's know that we are doing it for the interests of the profession and for ourselves currently and also for posterity. Let collaboration, openness, transparency, accountability, integrity, and ethics underpin what we do, because this is eventually going to be for the good of all of us and for the future posterity as we put patients at the heart of what we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't think I can add anything above that. Particularly liked your closing statement, very powerful. Apologies, we've overshot by 7 minutes by my watch. But
so can you allow me to go to the other session? The principal is looking for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we are done with the session. Thank you very much, Professor. Back to you, Anis.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you very much, all the presenters, all the panelists. Very insightful communication and thought processes, and we hope some of it comes to fruition in the near term. Before I give the floor or the virtual floor to Patricia, I want to share a story with you from the last conference. We had just finished the conference, and I was sitting by that nice pool at White Sands, and I was sitting with one of the 1,000 registered pharmacists, and I saw him in the pool, talking to young girls and running after them. So I went and I sat by the wife, and I said, don't you feel sad when you see this guy swimming after these young girls? So the wife replied, no, not at all. Even dogs chase after cars they can't drive. With those not so funny comments, I'll hand over to Dr. Patricia Nyokabi to do the rapporteur's report. Please keep it as short as possible. I know there's a lot to report, but please keep it as short as possible because some of us are hungry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anis. Kindly confirm that you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yes, so my name is Dr. Patricia Nyokabi. I'm a pharmacist working under the Ministry of Health. I'm honored to present the rapporteur's presentation. Thank you to Dr. Daniela and the entire PSK Secretariat for the invitation. So I'll go right ahead with the presentation. So I have been mandated with summarizing about 20 hours worth of conference presentation into just 15 minutes. So let's see how that goes. Yeah, so I'll have a very brief presentation from day one to just the panel that has ended right now. So on day one, we had welcome remarks from Dr. Kabali Kulicha. She is the PSK Vice President. She acknowledged all members present and mentioned that this will be the first conference of its kind that was being held virtually. So her aspirations for the conference were that it should educate, inspire, and mobilize for action. We had prayers led by Dr. Rogers Atebe, and then we had the national anthem. Thereafter, we had an opening speech and conference objectives led by Dr. Eva Amwayi, who is the conference convener. Dr. Eva expounded on the theme for the conference, and maybe I can relay it: pharmacy delivering primary healthcare, responding to emerging healthcare dynamics. She went ahead to define primary healthcare and to expound on the emerging trends that are in the field, including telemedicine and self-care. The theme of self-care has repeated itself over and over again. We're going to see it in many other presentations. We had opening remarks from Dr. Louis Machugu, who is the PSK president. He first of all led members in a moment of silence for pharmacist colleagues lost in the past year. He then shared sentiments about the PSK conference that was meant to be held in May this year, but COVID, as we all know. Excuse me. So he acknowledged that the profession was going through a very rapidly evolving landscape with very hostile policies and very hostile political processes, like those that are happening at Kent. I think all of us are aware. So he encouraged members to raise the profile of the profession, and this came about even in his keynote speech. And he went ahead to single out pharmacists whose support to PSK is noteworthy. This include Doctors Jenga, Irungu, and Dr. Utundu. We were honored to have Dr. Rashid Aman, chief guest address. He's the Cabinet Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health. He convened. He then went ahead to commend PSK for the great stewardship of the profession. He encouraged members to take individual and collective responsibility in the advancement of the profession. And this was very personal to him. He mentioned that there had been lethargy and despair among pharmacists. So he called upon all of us to not let the prestige of the profession be eroded. He called upon us to go beyond the routine and classic roles and explore areas that are unexploited. And he gave an example of research and innovation. He asked members to be adaptable, that the COVID-19 experience has a lot of silver linings for us as healthcare workers. He concluded by accepting to have a webinar session for PSK members on clinical trials. I know that we'll hold Dr. Daniela and the PSK Secretariat to account. We can't wait to have that session with Dr. Rashid Aman. Later, we had our first panel session on pharmacists advancing primary healthcare. The moderator was Dr. Michael Mungoma, and the panelists were Dr. Kathare, Dr. Opanga, and Professor Ndemo. So the focus of the presentation was introduction to PHC, medication use and related errors, training needs, self-care interventions for health, and drug addiction. These are gory statistics that medication errors are the third leading cause of death. I'll quote what the panelists say, that if we remove medication, there's no pharmacist, and that's a fact. So let us be medication use experts and not distributors or anything else. Let us be medication use experts. There's another quote that our role is to diagnose and resolve medication-related problems. Yes. Again, this theme carries on through many presentations, that the curriculum in our schools is not aligned to the needs in the marketplace. So we need to have policy that will, to change the curricula. Again, self-care, drug addiction, let me get to this. So there was a robust discussion on billing for medication therapy management service. I remember Professor Ndemo even challenging members that maybe some of us need to change our wardrobes to look very professional, and so to like improve our value and so that when you ask for amount X from patients, that they don't question it, that you've dressed the part, that you have good mastery of content, that you're delivering quality MTM. So, and he also mentioned that there's need for role models, even within institutions of learning. Later, we had the first keynote address by Dr. Anastasia Nyalita. She's the CEO of Kenya Healthcare Federation. Her keynote address was on supply chain considerations for primary healthcare. She introduced primary healthcare, which is care for all at all ages, and it's people-centered rather than disease-centered. She then went ahead to define supply chain, which was enlightening for me. It's from molecule, right from drug discovery to when the drug gets to the patient. She shared on some enablers, e.g. R&D that meets public health demands, strong regulatory systems, fair pricing and reimbursements, a competent workforce, collaboration with private entities. She concluded that whichever field you are in as a pharmacist, you have a key role to play in ensuring strong supply chain to ensure primary healthcare. Her recommendation was to stay engaged in the society. She attributed her journey and how far she's gone with staying engaged in the society. We had another panel session on creating a winning supply chain for primary healthcare. The moderator was Dr. Preston Ochieng. The panelists were Dr. Zonyanga, Ryungu, and Dr. Kahare. So the focus was on introduction to supply chain management systems, etc. So the discussion points were policy direction for HPTs. It was very enlightening to learn from Dr. Ryungu that Kenya now has a supply chain strategy. It's ready for launch. It's anchored on the documents, KHSSP, Kenya Health Policy, the Constitution, etc. So it has a clear implementation plan that's already costed. The M&D is already in place. He went on to encourage pharmacists that at the Ministry of Health, it was formerly a division, now it's a department, it's soon to be a directorate. We had discussions on accessibility. 2.1 billion people around the world have no access to drugs. There was a quote that all the donated drugs will not do any good if there's no infrastructure to ensure access, and it is true. We then had discussions on emergency supply chain preparedness, especially in the COVID situation. A panelist shared that an emergency supply chain framework had already been prepared way before COVID. Simulations had been done, initiatives had already been started, but in the face of COVID, we resulted to default and lost all the gains that we had made. The framework was put aside, which is very unfortunate. So training needs, again, there's a gap and it needs to be filled. Of course, we can't talk about supply chain and not talk about corruption. We were told that it's the same script at KEMSA that has been over the years. It's nothing new. So conclusion, advocacy, ring fencing of funds, etc. So at this point, we had 5 breakout sessions. I'll go briefly through them so that members who attended one and not the others. So business and entrepreneurship. The moderator was Dr. Kamamia. The panelists were Dr. Mukuria and Dr. Waluho. So basically just encouraging us to move from being job seekers to job creators. And there are challenges, of course, that business people experience. So they were asking for, a forum to discuss all these things. There's an over-reliance on imports. There are 42 local manufacturers, yet we still have so many imports coming into the country, which is unfortunate. We had a very interesting discussion on parallel importation. Is it legal? Is it illegal? So it was a discussion. So we say that it has really benefited Kenyans, especially in accessing oncology drugs. But there was a concern on how to ensure quality of commodities that are imported through the parallel importation mechanism. So there was a discussion on why business fails, and I've listed the points. Number 2, there was a breakout session on regulatory and pharmacovigilance. The moderators were Drs. Njuki and Mathenge. The panelists were Drs. Pandit, Shah, Mwangi, and Amwayi. So the focus areas were role of regulatory authority in primary healthcare. So regulatory is a pathway for drugs to be available in the market. And especially now during COVID-19, we've seen that. Maybe it's good to note that PPB has recently drafted scheduling guidelines that ensure access, practice, and registration. It's something to look out for. Role of pharmacovigilance in primary healthcare. Above everything else, pharmacovigilance is for patient safety. The products are of good quality. With self-care, there are a lot of drugs that are used, even off-label, bought straight from the internet. What can we do about them? How can we leverage on tech to enhance pharmacovigilance? So there was a discussion on industry growth in the last 5 years within RA and PV. So we've seen East Africa harmonization, we've seen IGAD harmonization, which makes regulatory very easy. There are also many training options that have come up in the last 5 years in regulatory. Some of you might already know that there has been an African Medicines Agency that has been set up. So it's something to look out for, and the impact that it will have in ensuring regulatory in medicines in Africa. Very brief, we had another session on tackling unemployment in pharmacy. The moderator was Dr. Esther. The panelists were Dr. Zothiambo, Machogu, Konje, and Panga. So the focus areas were the root cause of unemployment in the country. Dr. Machogu shared a roadmap on how the profession has evolved over the years. So in early 2000s, there were a growing number of quacks. From 2010 thereabouts, there were growing numbers of universities that are training pharmacy. Thereafter, devolution happened. So when did the rain start beating us? There was a question of identity. Are we just custodians of health products and technologies, or are we people that go beyond that and we are doctors that diagnose, evaluate, and resolve medication-related problems? Number two, we need to deliver on our social contract. What were we really trained to do that no one else can do? If we can identify that, then no one will be able to take up our jobs. We won't be saying, oh, sijui which cadres are taking up our jobs. So challenges faced by private sector in regards to employment. So what the private sector is grappling with, they want ready talent. They don't want you to come on board and then they have to train you again. Number two, they want an affordable workforce. There has been a really misconstrued notion, which is very unfortunate, that anywhere someone is employed, they want to benchmark with what the government is paying, which makes it very unfair for private sector because maybe they're not in a position to offer that, or they can get cheaper workforce elsewhere. Innovation and efficiency. Is our universities training for market needs? There's a discussion that maybe our lecturers may be using notes that were used 20 years ago. Are they still relevant for our market? And number four is both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's globalization. Talent can be sourced from anywhere. They can get cheap labor from anywhere. But the advantage is that we can also practice anywhere in the world. So concerns with young graduates, they're qualified yet inexperienced. And we seek for opportunities to gain experience. So explore opportunities, whether it's volunteership or anything, just to get that experience. Number two, they have very high expectations that are not necessarily right. They're unaware of market dynamics. They're unaware of their potential. I'll give an example, and it's Dr. Konje who was sharing this. Don't look for opportunities with the word pharmacist in it. Like when you're looking for jobs in newspapers and in other sites, it doesn't have to have the word pharmacist for you to apply. You're trained to be anything, like she gave an example of graduate trainee programs at McKinsey, at Equity, who said that as a young pharmacist, you can't get into that and later on get into what you wanted to get into eventually. We had a breakout session, I believe it's number 4, on manufacturing. The moderator was Dr. Daniela. The panelists were Drs. Vimal and Rohin. So the focus areas were market share of locally manufactured goods and how it could be increased, challenges a new entrant into the manufacturing sector would face, and pharma manufacturing is in 2 out of the big 4 agenda. So has this agenda, what policy and regulatory enablers has this agenda brought to local pharma manufacturers? Time is going really fast, so I'll try to summarize. So, in the Kenyan market, 70% in value terms is for the drugs that are imported. But on the other hand, 70% in units or volume is what is made locally. So the challenges, especially for new entrants, the tax regime is not too friendly, and maybe this is something you can read on. The Public Procurement Act does not favor local manufacturers. The capitalization of new equipment also does not favor. This VAT on all machineries does not favor. There's an electricity rebate that was introduced last year. It has since been removed. So you see, it makes it very unfair for local manufacturers, and yet they have to compete with the international ones. And it makes their return on investment very low. So major pointers in starting a drug. So this was the question. And it was borrowing on the wealth of experience, for example, of Dr. Patel, who's been in the industry for 30 years plus. So for someone who would want to venture into that field, clear vision, consider infrastructure, and what have you. So as a conclusion, they offered to take up members who want mentorship of some sort. Dr. Patel even offered to let members who are interested meet his dad, who is 90 years plus and is the one who was the proprietor of Cosmos. PSK, and this is very important, is willing to develop and endorse a policy position in collaboration with local manufacturers. This advocacy will help boost local production. I think, is this day 2 still or day 3? I've lost count, but I'm trying to go really fast. So we had a presentation by Dr. Louis Machogo, who's the president of PSK, on healthcare as an investment. He basically talked about 3 points to raise the profile of pharmacists. He said, number one, you can get into politics. We've tried that. It's very expensive. Advocacy, again, very expensive. So his proposal is that we invest in a high volume parenteral fluids plant listing in the Nairobi Stock Exchange. We already have land. We already have a project steering committee. Quantification has been done. Fundraising is what is being put in place. And they plan to seek state incentives. So this will help us raise the profile of pharmacists. Oh yeah, it was just one slide, sorry. But I'm sure Dr. Louis can share his presentation and it will be available to all of us. It's very insightful. We had a panel session for young pharmacists in response to COVID-19. The moderator was Dr. Onyango, the panelists were Drs. Anyango and Kelly Wanyonyi. So it was basically what young pharmacists are doing to contribute to COVID-19 response. Yeah, so the young pharmacists are encouraged to engage more aggressively, to stay informed, and to create solid networks. This is today. Very briefly, of course, I didn't have time to polish the notes nicely. So we had a keynote address by Mrs. Joyce Chaivo from Zimbabwe. We're honored to have you, ma'am. She's the Vice President of African Pharmaceutical Forum. She shared sentiments on the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it has had on pharmacists. You know, there's been a lot of pressure to come up with a vaccine, to continue serving patients even in the midst of the pandemic. She challenged members on the role they can play as individual pharmacists in the transformation of global health. She highlighted the various roles of pharmacists in global health, and I know you have them in your mind. And then she went ahead to encourage us to be we know of 7-star pharmacists. So she wants us to be 7+ star pharmacists. And I sign up personally. So she encouraged the society to continue engaging in advocacy and upon us as members to support the society. This will help the society have global visibility. This is the panel session we've just had. So my notes are, again, very brief. It was a panel on policy and regulatory framework in primary healthcare. The moderator was Dr. Frank Wafula. The panelists were Dr. Nyakiba, Dr. Ocheng, and Professor Gwantai. Yeah, so I know it's still fresh in your mind, so I won't go into details, but what's important to note is Dr. Gwantai encouraged us to translate knowledge into practice. It's one thing to be taught, but one thing to be able to translate all that knowledge in our various spheres of influence. She mentioned that there has been introduction of public health and health economics within the curriculum. There has also been a new course, a postgraduate in drug discovery and development that you need to be on the lookout for. I know maybe some of us have been waiting for that, so this is good news for you. Regulatory milestones in PPB. There has been possible amendments to CAP 244. It needs a lot of consensus building and lobbying. Overregulation cripples creativity. It's something that we've gone through over and over again. Regulation will also help us to define levels of practice. You know, what can a pharmacist do at this level? What can a pharmaceutical technologists do at this level? Very important. And then we had Dr. Nyakiba telling us about UHC. It was very interesting for me, having interned in the UHC secretariat before my current posting, about the reformed NHIF, and for it to stop being a hospital insurer to a health insurer, and the strategic purchasing for all Kenyans. He also mentioned about the essential benefits package, what services are in the essential packages and to be provided by whom. He encouraged us to look out for the national certification framework for facilities. It was launched during the Health Forum. So I think that we had 7 sponsors addresses from the following sponsors. You can see them, and we're so grateful for their support and for their, not only for their support, but also for their addresses. They are very enlightening. We also had abstract presentation. It's very commendable that we had 15 abstract presentations in total. They are drawn from the following sub-themes. I've noticed they are very dynamic presentations and even presenters from across the country. We had from Wajir to Bungoma to Kisumu to Coast Provincial General Hospital, to Nairobi and across the spectrum. It was very also interesting to note that from students to very senior professionals, I noticed a lot of undergrad students, even from my own alma mater, and very senior professionals, including Professor Orwa, to mention but a few, and partners, and we really, really appreciate. My final thoughts, having had so much impactful content presented to us over the last 4 days, I'm just curious, what is one thing that has really stood out for you? Feel free to post in the chat. I'll give you 30 seconds. What's one thing that has really stood out for you? As you share in the chat, it's just to encourage us to back it up with commitment. Maybe for some of us is you've been encouraged to share an abstract in the next conference. We can't wait. Maybe to reach out to a certain speaker who encouraged you, who's in your line of work, to network in that way. Maybe for some of us, drawing from the title sponsor's address, to engage a second brain, if you can remember from the very first day, or maybe to write a purpose statement. Whatever it is, let's back it up with commitment. Let it make a difference for us that we attend. I can't wait to see, I know we're around 400 of us. I get to see 400 hospitals getting better, 400 community pharmacists getting better, all the universities getting better conference. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm upset I didn't make it to your highlights. I was expecting to be a highlight of the day today. Well, that brings us to almost the end of this conference. I would like to personally thank all those who have been involved in making this a reality, and congratulate all those working behind the scenes, and I'm sure Dr. Eva is going to mention their names personally. But well done. It has put us at another level, and I think we are fortunate to have this kind of talent in the pharmacy profession. I'm not sure if the other professions have had their conference virtually or not, but this one has been really well done. Keep up the good work, well done. But let's go back to Mombasa. Thank you, and thank you for being a wonderful audience and for all your laughs and shout outs. And now to Dr. Eva to formally close the conference and say hasta la vista.
Okay. Hi, confirm that you can hear me, please. Anyone, somebody?
Yes, there I am. I can hear you.
Okay. So it's been a great 4 days. What can I say? I'm thankful. I just want to remove a vote of thanks first to our sponsors, AstraZeneca, our title sponsor. Thank you very much. I think your presentations were actually very inspiring. The first one on resilience was very, very good. It captured people's thoughts and minds. Bayer, Cosmos, GSK, In Supply, and CAPI. Thank you so much for sponsoring our conference. We're looking forward to working with you to, of course, better the pharmacist profession. Next is to all of you, all the participants. You know what? I'll clap for you. Thank you for sticking through the 4 hours or 5 hours like today of a conference. Thank you for your remarks on the comment section. Really enjoyed reading them. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to hosting you physically, hopefully once the pandemic eases, in Mombasa or any other location, Anis, with any other location that seems fair. Then to our panelists, asanteni sana, we really appreciate the content. To our presenters, we really appreciate the content. And to the abstract presenters, we really acknowledge the work you have put in, the effort you have put in, and from PSK to you, we really appreciate you. Then to the Secretariat, Dr. Daniela Munene, from the first day we had meetings this year, when we were planning the pharmaceutical conference, the physical one, and we realized, oh no, we cannot do this anymore. Thank you for being that person who, you know, says, okay, let's do this, let's change it. Bao, thank you so much for your comms. Everyone has been seeing the WhatsApp messages, how to register. This has all come from Bao. Bao, thank you so much. You're amazing. To Rose, who picks up our phone calls when we call her, to ask her about our payment, to ask her about our registration status, to ask about anything. Rose has always been that voice. When you call PSK, she's always been the soft voice that takes up the phone. Thank you so much, Rose, for all you do. We appreciate you. No, Rachel. To Rose, thank you so much for your dedication, for putting out the budget to us, for allowing us to use your office and your money. Asante sana, we like your money, we'll spend it. Thank you so much, Rose. And to Eric, CPDs has been one of those things that pharmacists we just struggle with, you know. But thank you, your videos, I'm sure, have educated so many throughout the 4 days that we've been around. And now I'm sure we all know. Mind you, it was a voiceover, but people were still asking you questions and you were still responding. Thank you so much, Eric, for also organizing the first few meetings of the committee. And we really appreciate you for your dedication. Next, I will go to the Symposium Committee. Yay, my people. So this, I'll start with Dr. Mike Mungoma. Thank you so much, always dialing in from wherever you are, whether it's in Mombasa or Thika, you have really given it your all. Asante sana, Dr. Mike. Dr. Grace Nganga, asante sana. When you are sending all your ideas for the conference, you are on the road. Sometimes you are attending some things at work, but you always give your time. Thank you so much. To Dr. Miano, you know, I work with you. You're a fantastic person, a great resource to PSK and to the conference and the Symposium Committee. I really appreciate you and all the work you've put in. Dr. Wambura, Kate, asante sana. You have really, you are voice of reason. When we were having a lot of arguments, you kept the calm. So thank you so much. Dr. Christabel, always dedicated, even though she sometimes she may not have been able to dial in physically or to dial in into the meetings. She always sent her comments, and wherever you are right now, we really appreciate you, we support you. So keep up the good work, and keep up the good work in ISOP too. To Dr. Esther Anyango, I met you not so long ago, but you have come in and really had an impactful you are very impactful when you're following up with the speakers and arranging that they have good internet and everything. We appreciate you. Keep up the good work, and we'll support you wherever we can in FIP or PSK or as a mentor and a coach. Thank you. To Hezron, the guy behind all the control room computers. So on Tuesday, we were on a table and we had 5 laptops, each working. He's moving the presentations, he's listening keenly, he's telling us the cues and everything. You are a great coordinator, and you're a great someone who, you're great with your data and your internet and everything. So thank you so much, Hezron. And to all of us, I just want to finish with this one thing. I encourage all of us to plug into to PSK, and to serve and network, take up mentorship, take up coaching. Let's use our collective resources from wherever you are, whichever pharmacist you are. Let's use our collective resources to raise the profile of the Kenyan pharmacist. We have been given the challenge today, right? What kind of pharmacist do you want to be, right? So I choose to be 7+ star pharmacist. And from me to you, thank you so much. Karibuni sana, and see you next year. And I officially close. Can now leave the meeting room or stay in the chat group. Thank you so much.
Oh, I have been reminded I've not prayed. So as we leave, let me just do a small prayer. Oh God, we come before you. We thank you for this wonderful conference. Lord, we just pray that we may be able to put in the lessons that we've learned into practice. Keep our profession guided. Give us the grace to tolerate each other and to work professionally with each other. Lord, as we all disperse for the weekend, kindly bless all of us and our families. I pray this through the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.